The doctor's hands began to shake the moment he looked at the ultrasound monitor. At first I thought it was just nerves. Hospitals are tense places. People carry their whole lives into those rooms. But then he swallowed hard, cleared his throat, and did something I had never seen a medical professional do before. He turned the screen away from my wife. "Mr. Carter," he said quietly, "I need to speak with you alone. Right now." My wife laughed nervously from the exam bed. "Is everything okay? You're scaring me." The doctor said too quickly. "The baby is fine, perfect actually, strong heartbeat. Please. Just a moment with your husband." He didn't wait for permission. He stood open the door and motioned me into a small consultation room down the hall. The moment the door shut, his composure "Wife," he said. Immediately, I actually laughed. A sharp, disbelieving sound. "What? File for divorce," he repeated. His face was pale now. "And you need to get out of that house tonight." I stared at him. "Doctor, my wife is pregnant. We're here for an ultrasound." "Are you joking?" "I'm not joking," he said. "And I don't have time to explain everything yet. But I am telling you, as a physician and as a human being, you are not safe." My first thought was that he'd made a mistake. Wrong chart. Wrong patient. Some kind of ethical line crossed. And he looked me straight in the eye and said, "If you trust me at all, you'll listen. When you see what I saw, your world is going to change." And it did. But not yet. Not until I walked back into that room, smiled at my wife, held her hand, and pretended everything was normal, while my entire life quietly cracked down the middle. If you've ever trusted the wrong person, I understand, and if you've lived long enough, you probably have. I rate every comment. You're not alone. At 57. I thought I knew who I was. I'd built a construction consulting firm from nothing. 30 years of early mornings, missed vacations, careful decisions. I wasn't flashy, but I was stable, respected. The kind of man banks return calls to. I'd been married once before. My first wife, Ellen, died of cancer after a 2-year fight that hollowed me out. When she was gone, the house felt like a museum of grief. Every room held her voice. I existed, but I wasn't living. Then I met Rachel. She was younger than me by 15 years, but not naïve. She was warm, attentive, thoughtful in ways that felt genuine. She listened when I talked about Ellen. She didn't compete with my past. When we married, my adult son Daniel was polite but distant. He lived 2 hours away, busy with his own family and career. Rachel tried, brought food, sent texts, remembered birthdays. Slowly, things softened. When Rachel told me she was pregnant, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. I was going to be a father again. Late in life, yes, but grateful, careful, present. The headache started about 2 months later. Nothing dramatic at first. Just a dull pressure behind my eyes. Fatigue that didn't match my schedule. Joint pain that made getting out of bed feel heavier than it should. Rachel noticed immediately. "You've been pushing too hard," she said, pressing 2 small capsules into my hand one morning. "I got you some supplements. Natural, they will help." I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? I went to my doctor. Blood work came back normal. "Stress," he said. "Age. Big life changes." Rachel doubled down on care. Tea at night. Gentle reminders to take the vitamins. Hand on my shoulder. Kiss on my cheek. I didn't notice how often she watched me swallow. At family dinners, everything looked right. Rachel glowing with pregnancy. Me trying to hide exhaustion. Daniel visiting when he could, bringing his wife and kids. But there were moments. Rachel's phone always face down. A charge on our joint card she brushed off as prenatal errands. Her insistence on handling my medications after a minor knee procedure. Small things. Easy to dismiss, until the ultrasound. Back in the exam room, the doctor, with a calm smile, announced the baby's measurements. Heart rate, development. "It's a boy," he said. Rachel cried. I kissed her forehead. My hands were steady. We drove home in silence. She talked about names, nurseries, futures. I nodded. That night, I didn't take the vitamins. I pretended to. The next morning, I called a private investigator. A man recommended by an old business attorney who didn't ask questions. Within 48 hours, the story I thought was living began to unravel. The ultrasound hadn't just shown a baby. It had triggered a routine prenatal screening that compared genetic markers already in the system. Markers from a workplace wellness program. The biological father wasn't me. It was someone I knew. Someone who had been in my life, shaking my hand, sitting at my table. The doctor hadn't begged me to leave because of infidelity alone. He begged me because he believed I was being slowly poisoned. The investigator confirmed it a week later. The supplements Rachel had been giving me contained a substance that mimicked natural illness when taken over time. Enough to weaken organs. Enough to kill quietly. Enough to look like stress. Enough to look like age, and she wasn't new to this. 10 years earlier, under a different name, she'd married another older man. Wealthy, recently widowed. He'd gotten sick too. He'd died quietly. I wasn't her first attempt. I was her next. I stopped ingesting anything she touched. I smiled. I played my role. I let her believe her timeline was intact. And I planned. When the evidence was complete, bank records, surveillance photos, lab results, I didn't confront her in private. I waited. At a charity banquet filled with people who knew us, trusted us, admired us, I stood at the podium and told the truth. About the baby, about the poison, about the stolen identity. She wasn't there. She'd gone into early labor that morning. But the man who helped her plan it was. He stood. Tried to deny it. Tried to leave. He was arrested in front of everyone. The next day, she was arrested in her hospital room. The baby was taken into protective custody. My health recovered. Slowly. Fully. The truth, losses don't heal. They change you instead. But here's what I learned, and why I'm sharing this. Predators don't always look dangerous. Sometimes they look like love. Sometimes they bring you tea. Call you Oni. Rub your shoulders while counting your days. Trust is powerful. But verification saves lives. Listen to your instincts. Question what doesn't add up. And never ignore your body when it tells you something is wrong. Even if the people you love insist everything is fine. I should be dead. I'm not. And that difference came down to one doctor who trusted what he saw. And one moment where the truth refused to stay hidden. If you've ever felt something was off and talked yourself out of it, don't. Your life may depend on it. I didn't sleep the night after the arrest. Not because of fear, but because of the silence. For months, my body had lived in a constant state of alarm. Headaches. Nausea. A low hum of unease I couldn't name. Now, lying alone in the guest bedroom with the door locked, the house felt eerily calm. Too calm. Like the moment after a storm passes, when you're not sure what's been destroyed yet. By morning, the news had spread. Friends called. Business associates texted. Some messages were supportive. Others were cautious, curious, hungry for most of them. I didn't owe the world an explanation. I owed myself survival. Rachel was denied bail. Flight risk. Identity fraud. Attempted murder. The words felt surreal, like they belonged to someone else's life. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw her smile across the dinner table. The way she'd say my name softly. The way she'd remind me to take my vitamins. Daniel came to see me that afternoon. He stood awkwardly in the doorway. Taller than I remembered, his hair flecked with gray like mine. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I should have seen it, he said finally. Something was off. No, I said. You trusted me. I brought her into our lives. He shook his head. You didn't poison yourself. That broke something open in my chest. I sat down heavily. And for the first time since Ellen died, I cried in front of my son. The baby was placed in temporary foster care, while the courts sorted through the wreckage. I asked about him every day. Not because he was mine, but because he was innocent. Rachel never asked about him again after her arrest. That told me everything. The trial came faster than I expected. The evidence was overwhelming. Toxicology reports, financial records, surveillance footage. A pattern of behavior that stretched back years. She sat at the defense table stone, faced eyes forward, as if the room didn't exist. When the verdict came back guilty on all counts, there was no reaction, no tears, no anger. Just calculation, even then. She was sentenced to life without parole. I thought I'd feel relief. Instead, I felt tired. Healing didn't come all at once. It came in small, unremarkable ways. A morning without nausea. A walk that didn't leave me breathless. The slow return of appetite. Trusting my own body again. I sold the house. Too many memories. Too many shadows. I downsized. Simplified. Started volunteering at a local mentorship program for men rebuilding their lives after loss. I didn't tell my story unless asked. When I did, I left out the sensational parts. I focused on the lesson. Loneliness makes us vulnerable. Grief opens doors we don't realize we've unlocked. And evil doesn't always arrive loudly, it often whispers. One afternoon, months later, my doctor, the same one from the ultrasound, called to check on me. I'm glad you're still here, he said. So am I replied. Sometimes I think about how close I came to not being. About how many people didn't get the warning I did. If you're watching this and something in your life feels wrong, listen to that feeling. Don't explain it away. Don't silence it to keep the peace. Peace built on lies is just danger waiting patiently. I'm alive because someone paid attention, now I do too. Time did what it always does. It moved forward, whether I was ready or not. The first real sign that I was healing came one morning when I woke up and didn't immediately brace for pain. No pounding behind my eyes, No nausea curling in my stomach. Just quiet. Ordinary quiet. I lay there longer than necessary, afraid to move, as if the moment might vanish if I acknowledged it. But it didn't. I got up, made coffee, and drank it slowly. No bitterness from pills. No watchful eyes counting my sips. Just coffee, steam rising in the kitchen light. And the strange realization that I had survived something I was never meant to see coming. Daniel started calling more often. At first, it was awkward, two men circling grief from different angles. Then it became easier. We talked about work, about his kids, about nothing at all. One Sunday, he brought his family over for lunch. The house was smaller now, neutral, unburdened by the past. His youngest climbed into my lap with a book and asked me to read. I did. My doctor cleared me fully after 3 months. No organ damage, no lasting effects. He called it remarkable. I called it mercy. The investigation expanded. More victims surfaced, men who'd lost money, years, trust. Some survived, some hadn't. Each story carried the same pattern. Same tenderness, same patience, same quiet harm. I testified once. I didn't raise my voice. I told the truth and let it stand on its own. That was enough. The baby was adopted by a couple from out of state. Good people, from what the social worker said. I asked for no contact, no updates. Not out of cruelty, but out of respect. That child deserved a life unshadowed by the choices of adults. There are nights when I still wake suddenly, heart racing, convinced I've forgotten something important. A pill, a warning, a sign. Then I remind myself it's over. The world feels sharper now. I notice small things. The way people pause before answering questions. The way hands linger or don't. I listen more, trust slower, love carefully, but not fearfully. That's the difference. I didn't let what happened turn me bitter. I let it make me awake. If there's one thing I leave you with, it's this: pay attention to patterns, to changes, to the moments that don't fit. The truth rarely shouts. It waits for you to notice. I was given and I intend to spend the rest of my life honoring it. There's a moment after surviving something like that, when people expect you to go back to normal. They don't understand that normal no longer exists. I didn't become afraid of people. I became aware of them. There's a difference. Fear shuts you down. Awareness sharpens you. I stopped rushing decisions. Stopped filling silence just to feel less alone. I learned to sit with discomfort instead of medicating it, emotionally or otherwise. The body remembers what the mind tries to excuse. One afternoon, months later, I was standing in a grocery store aisle when I caught myself reaching automatically for a supplement bottle. My hand froze midair. I stared at it for a long moment, then put it back and laughed quietly at myself hard. Old dangers, too, if you're not paying attention. I started cooking again. Real meals. Simple things. Nothing that required trust beyond my own hands. There was something grounding about that. About knowing exactly what went into my body and why. People sometimes ask if I miss her. The answer is complicated. I miss who I thought she was. I miss the idea of companionship, of shared mornings, of believing I was finally done grieving. But I don't miss the lies. And I don't miss the version of myself that ignored warning signs, because acknowledging them felt too lonely. Loneliness can be louder than danger if you let it. On my birthday that year, Daniel surprised me with a small gathering. Just family, no speeches, no toasts. Just laughter, food, and the kind of warmth that doesn't demand anything from you. As I watched my grandchildren play on the floor, it hit me how close I'd come to losing all of it. Not just my life, but every future moment I hadn't lived yet. That's the part people don't talk about. Survival isn't just about escaping the worst outcome. It's about reclaiming the days that almost didn't happen. The quiet mornings, the ordinary conversations. The latter you didn't know you'd still hear. If you're watching this and something in your life feels slightly off, don't dismiss it just because there's no proof yet. Proof comes later. Instinct comes first. And instinct is not paranoia. It's experience speaking before it has language. I trusted the wrong person once. It nearly cost me everything. I won't make that mistake again. And if this story keeps even one person from ignoring feeling they can't explain yet, then sharing it was worth it. Stay alert. Stay grounded. And don't confuse comfort with safety. They are not the same thing. I used to think wisdom came from age. Now I know it comes from attention. After everything ended, people treated me differently. Softer voices, longer pauses. As if I were fragile. I wasn't. I was sturdier than I'd ever been, just quieter. The world didn't feel dangerous anymore. It felt honest. I began walking every morning just after sunrise. Same route. Same pace. I liked knowing exactly where I was going. There's something powerful about routine when chaos has had its turn with you. One morning I passed the hospital where it all began. The windows reflected the sky, calm and ordinary. I stood there longer than I meant to, remembering the doctor's shaking hands, the urgency in his voice. A stranger who chose to care enough to speak up. We don't talk enough about that kind of courage. I wrote him a letter. Thanked him. Told him I was alive because he trusted what he sought of ignoring it for comfort or convenience. He wrote back weeks later. Said he still thinks about that day. Said he'd do it again. So what I life didn't magically improve, it simplified. And in that simplicity, I found something steadier than happiness. Clarity. I don't chase people anymore. I don't fill empty spaces just to avoid feeling them. If something doesn't feel right, I stop, I listen, I wait. And if it still doesn't make sense, I walk away. That's not weakness, that's survival. Every now and then, someone recognizes me and asks if the story was hard to tell. I always answer the same way. Living it was harder. But telling it might save someone else. So if you're still here, still listening, take this with you. Love doesn't rush you, care doesn't weaken you, and danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it smiles, sometimes it offers help. Sometimes it tells you everything is fine while quietly counting the days. Pay attention, protect your health. Verify what matters. Your life is worth the discomfort of asking questions. Mine was. There's a strange peace that settles in when you accept that some chapters don't get rewritten. They just end. I stopped trying to make sense of Rachel after a while. Not because the answers weren't there, but because understanding her wouldn't give me anything back. Time spent dissecting monsters is time stolen from the living. Instead, I focused on rebuilding trust where it mattered. With my son, with my body, with myself. I learned to check labels, to ask questions at appointments, to read reports instead of skimming summaries. Not out of fear but respect. Respect for how close I came to disappearing simply because I didn't want to seem suspicious or ungrateful. There's a lie we tell ourselves as we get older. And being kind means being unquestioning. It doesn't. Kindness without awareness is just vulnerability wearing a smile. One evening, almost a year later, I sat on my porch watching the sun drop behind the trees. The air was warm, a neighbor waved. Somewhere down the street, a child laughed. Normal life. Continuing without apology. I realized then that survival isn't dramatic in the end. It's quiet, it's choosing to wake up, choosing to pay attention. Choosing not to dismiss the voice inside you just because it's inconvenient. That ultrasound appointment didn't just save my life. It gave me back my future. If you're listening to this, and something in your world feels wrong, too subtle to explain, too small to confront, don't wait for permission to take it seriously. Don't wait for proof that arrives too late. Ask the hard question, look closer, trust your instincts before you trust comfort. I never expected the truth. But I'm still here because I didn't ignore it once it showed itself. And if this story stays with you after the screen goes dark, if it makes you pause even once before swallowing an excuse that doesn't sit right, then it's done what it needed to do. Take care of yourself. No one else can do that part for you. I don't tell this story for sympathy. I tell it because silence almost killed me. There are people watching this right now who something isn't right in their lives. Not dramatic, not obvious, just off. A shift in behavior. A change in health, a detail that doesn't line up but feels too small to challenge. That's how it starts. Danger rarely arrives as chaos, it arrives as routine, as care. As someone you trust saying, "Don't worry, I've got this." If I had ignored that doctor, if I had swallowed one more pill, if I had chosen peace over truth for just a little longer, I wouldn't be here telling you this. I was saved by attention. By courage. By one moment where the truth refused to stay quiet. So let this be the last thing I leave you with. You are not wrong for questioning. You are not cruel for protecting yourself. And you are not imagining things when your instincts speak. Listen to them. Your life is worth the discomfort of doubt. Your future is worth the courage to ask why. And survival is worth more than preserving a lie. I never expected the truth to come from an ultrasound screen. But it did. And because of that, I'm still here. Take care of yourself, stay alert, and don't ignore the warning signs, especially when they come wrapped in love.